Now we're rocketing into an election year, but with 2 days to go to his deadline, it looks like Rishi Sunak will only see and perhaps deliver on one of his 5 pledges, specifically the one about halving inflation. Ooh. Which, is that really him or is that the Bank of England's responsibility? Meanwhile, on the other promises, let's just remind ourselves on cutting NHS waiting lists, no. Stopping small boats, unless you talk about between Christmas and New Year. Yeah, very good, well done him.
Weather's been terrible.
Weather's been terrible. Getting debt down, borrowing our way out of recession, and the economy still growing, no, that's not going well either. So, it's not the best foundation for a campaign.
Still with us to discuss the latest is political commentator Benedict Spence and TalkTV's political correspondent Alicia Fitzgerald. So let's talk about the immigration then, Alicia. This is the one where, we've ended with some, not quite so many boats coming over, but then the weather has, as I said, been awful. The immigration backlog, December the 31st, which is Sunday, was the date that he pledged to clear the migrant backlog by.
Yes, and the clear answer to this is that he has failed on that pledge. He really chose the stopping the boats as actually his main pledge to focus on throughout this year. This is the one that he has spent a lot of time drumming into people on any given opportunity in the media, in Parliament, and he's really stressed the importance of it. Sadly, it's not gone so well. Obviously, as you mentioned, over the Christmas period, we had no small boat crossings, whether or not that was actually just to do with the storms that we saw across a lot of the region where migrants come from. That is probably more so the case. We saw a similar story over summer as well. There were less migrant boat crossings then, and it was mainly credited to be due to weather conditions. So Rishi Sunak has chosen illegal migration specifically, not legal migration really, as the hill to die on here for his election campaign. Excuse me.
Well, we've had a text in from Peter who is talking about, he's talking about various things actually. We did ask if Rishi Sunak was a strong and effective leader when it came to curbing migration, and Peter says whoever's leader cannot fulfil the unrealistic expectation that Brexit would bring any benefit to the UK. It's devastated the economy, made immigration worse, and lost trade relationships. The only thing that stops the boats is the wind and the rain, not Sunak.
It's really interesting because since Brexit, we've had far less migrants come to the UK from the EU, but we've actually had more migrants from other parts of the world. So there is a bit of an interesting balancing act going on there. Stopping the boats has been an issue. This isn't a new thing. Illegal migration has been an issue for our country and for many other countries as well for a very long time now. This isn't a new thing, but the issue is just the speed at which it's increased. And then obviously we've also got to remember the negative impact on our country, but also the negative impact on the migrants themselves. So many deaths this year, really tragically as well, happen in these channel crossings. So there's a lot of pressure on politicians and governments across Europe, not just us, to really tackle this issue.
There is, however, though, when you look at what Peter said and talks about, Brexit having caused all these problems, you have a look around Europe, you have a look at Germany, you have a look at France, you have a look at the big...
And Italy and
Greece. And what you realise is that we're all facing many of the same problems. Their growth has been significantly less. They've got many of the same problems that we have in our economy. And to frame or focus our problems today on Brexit is a nonsense. I think it's been an inconsequential situation. I don't think the government have taken full advantage of what Brexit offered, but has it been a disaster for our economy? No. Has it stopped our growth? No. Has it stopped us changing? And the world's tectonic plates have changed. But let's just pick up something else, though. And Benedict, perhaps I could bring you in here. The boats aren't the problem, according to James. The problem is legal migration, which means UK companies don't have to invest in training and employing British workers. It also allows the government to cut back on education budgets because of the use of legal migrants, rendering the need for educated Britons unnecessary. And there is a really good point here, which is whenever we have an economic squeeze or a problem, we go overseas, thank you, bring us cheap labour, that will buy us out the problem. We did it in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the noughties, and every decade since. And now we're doing it massively. 700,000 net to prop up our education system and to prop up our NHS.
It's unsustainable, is the important thing. It is a short-term fix to alleviate a long-term systemic problem. and it is desperately unpopular. And we had this, this farce actually in the aftermath of Brexit, where we were told, oh, actually the issue of immigration has gone away. People don't care about it very much anymore, but they absolutely do. And they notice that investment isn't going into their education system. They notice that actually that their NHS is sort of having to cater not just to them, but actually to people from all over the world. They notice when actually signs are being put up in multiple languages, the implication there being that people are not being asked to assimilate as part of the process. They are just entitled to these things when they turn up and are not necessarily net contributors to the economy. And this causes an awful lot of anger. And I think that it is justified to say that it isn't sustainable long term. You do need to invest in the training, the retraining of people here. And you shouldn't look at a system that undercuts the wages of the people that are already here and say, yes, this is a fantastic system. That doesn't actually create any wealth. It expands the size of the economy because there are more people partaking in the economy. It doesn't make people richer at all.
Yeah, and we have talked in the past about the fact that, of those 600,000 legal migrants who came here, a large percentage were students who are actively being sought by universities because they get so much more
and
money.
a lot of dependents come with them.
And
none of these people actually could. I mean, the university system in this country is a Ponzi scheme. I'm sorry, it is. We're often told, oh, it's the pride of this country. It's not. It's an absolute joke, and we could close half of them tomorrow. We wouldn't lose anything of value.
Wow.
It is basically just a thing that we can go, no, seriously, there are numerous university courses that everybody knows people from this country do not apply for because they exist purely so that people from China can come here. They can do it. Not just China, but actually, no. But there are certain courses that are deliberately marketed specifically to Chinese students because they come here. They know that it's all going to be easy for them. They then get to say, I have a degree from a British university. They go back. They get an entry-level job. It is a scam. Everybody knows that.
But it's more of a scam because there are two other sides to this, which is, first of all, that they're really coming to this country for the language because English is still the international dominating language in international business. And also, it's a form of soft intelligence gathering.
Up to a point. But I think also, I mean, the fact that we do have so many dependents coming as part of this, I think
that's the point.
It's taking the something or other is what it is. And the fact that it is just sort of expanded and that it is people, again, you don't want to pinpoint because you don't want to be accused of bullying or whatever it is, but it is people from certain countries that massively dominate the statistics. And you do have to say to yourself, how has this loophole been allowed to be exploited for so long?
Alicia, if I can bring you back in here and just talk about the other pledges, you do wonder whether Rishi Sunak is now just wishing he just said, a bit kind of Tony Blair-like, things will get better, things can only get better, even though in many ways they haven't. But I mean, the one pledge, we have talked about the one pledge that did work, which is about interest rates, inflation, and that wasn't anything to do with him. But what about the other pledges?
It's interesting because when he unveiled these in January of this year, pretty much a year ago now, lots of people said that they were actually too much of an open goal. They were too vague because you're growing the economy. There wasn't a specific amount to buy and cutting NHS waiting times. People said, if he did that just by a tiny percentile, he could still claim success in that. But, fast forward to this point in the year when the pledges are said to have been achieved, and he hasn't even actually managed to kick into those pretty open goals, which is what people were really doubtful of when he first set them. Growing the economy hasn't happened. The economy has pretty much stagnated for a while now. Cutting NHS wait times, they've got bigger. Government borrowing's got bigger. I mean, all of it has pretty much gone the opposite way to the way that Sunak had wanted it to go. He obviously recently in that liaison committee, which is the chance where the Prime Minister sits with the chairperson of each select committee from each department, he actually said that there wasn't a set date for him stopping the votes, which obviously caused a few eyebrows to be raised because it was one of these 5 pledges that he said would be achieved by the end of the year. But now he's actually kind of slightly rode back on that and said they'll be stopped when they're stopped. I've done my best and we'll keep going with it. So what he'll do now in the new year is try and say, give the Conservatives your vote, keep us in government, and I can keep going with these rather than drop them at the kind of bad place that they're currently at.
But he's got to show that he's moving in the right direction. I think the economy is the key here because we talk about the Bank of England and sometimes people seem to think that Andrew Bailey is this kind of weird sort of, sage or otherwise. He's made the wrong call. He's made the wrong decisions. He's moved interest rates up too far and too late. He's forgotten about the changes in financial services and products. There's a lot of people who are really going to suffer in 2024 because of the delayed impact of interest rate rises, that they've gone up too far. And this was not demand-led inflation. Demand-led inflation, when people are buying too much stuff because they got too much money, that's what's putting up prices. This was cost-push inflation, which has nothing to do with demand and supply.
Do you think, Alicia, that this... I know we've talked before about this this May election being, according to a senior Labour MP, the May election being the worst-kept secret in Westminster, and you and I have debated about whether this is the worst-kept secret in Westminster or whether this is just a rumour at the most famous rumour mill in Britain.
Well, there's a few things at play here. Clearly, the Labour Party want the election as soon as possible. They're doing really well in the polls at the moment. They've got a lot of public support compared to the current government. And on the flip side as well, lots of people are now saying that if Sunak was to delay the election until autumn, it could actually be catastrophic for him. And that ties in nicely to what James was just saying about mortgage rates. Lots of people will be hit by the end of their fixed term mortgages over the next few months, taking us into autumn, and they'll now be paying a lot more money. We've spoken about this before, but the key point at this next election is going to be finances for people. It's been the most damaging thing for everyone in the public. It has been how they just can't make ends meet anymore. People who have really stable jobs, people who are working really hard, now are just really feeling the squeeze. So the biggest issue is just going to be, which party do I feel safest with? Which party will I be better off with? And if people start getting hit with these increased mortgage rates as a result of inflation and the Bank of England's raising of the interest rates, that could be really damaging for the Conservative Party as well. So there's a lot at play here. Whether it will be May or autumn, I guess we'll find out very soon, I hope.
Well, exactly. They're just about managing, I suppose, are definitely going to be the people who are probably going to be at the centre of this. But one of the things, Benedict, that we know is that a party that is well-oiled, that is well-run, is a party that is more likely to succeed. It's something that Tony Blair did very successfully, brought together all the wings of the party. Sue Gray, we know her name because of the Gray report. We know because, it was that report that looked into Partygate and all that nonsense. However, then the scandal as she was taken into the Labour fold, and it's reported in the Times, talking about how she is bringing people from all sides of the Labour Party together and saying to them, unless or until you stop fighting like rats in a sack, we're not going to have a chance of winning. She's got a point.
Yeah, she weathered that initial storm when she became the story, became the scandal, and has sort of hung on. And nobody thinks back to that time now and thinks, oh, it is a disgrace that she's still there. It is now all about party discipline. And you have to say, actually, when Keir Starmer became Labour leader, he didn't envisage, I don't think, that he would be Prime Minister or likely to be Prime Minister at this election cycle. Maybe in a few years' time if he got lucky, but actually the standing of the party was so low compared to where Boris Johnson was. He's done a reasonably good job of detoxifying aspects of the party. The job is not done. It's, it is still a party that is sort of waiting for those opportunities to exactly. It's simmering. So many ways of describing it. Below the surface, waiting for there to be an opportunity. And I suspect, actually, if he doesn't get quite as large a majority as he's anticipating, or they're anticipating, then certain factions within the Labour Party will use that to their advantage to try to pry things out of him. But for the time being, it has to be all about being on message, because it is a very large lead that they have, but that can, as Boris Johnson found out, evaporate very, very quickly if people think, oh, you don't have a handle on this situation. They've given a very good impression of being a party that is sort of on message. It's all singing from the same hymn sheet. It's not promising you the earth. It's not, pie in the sky thinking. But everybody remembers the Corbyn years. They can still pinpoint the people who are still in the party from those years. Every now and then there's a bit of friction with Angela Rayner. There's this, that and the other. And you think, will it all come out again? And it must be said that their discipline, compared to the Tories of the last 12 months or so, has been iron tight compared to what it is they're up against, and that has helped a lot.
And she has managed to bring together Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham, of course, who's quite a big character, and he is the mayor of Manchester. So they... I mean, it seems to me from reading the papers and everything that at one stage they were barely speaking.
Yeah, because it's quite clear that Andy Burnham wants to be Labour leader, fancies himself as a potential Prime Minister. But he's not the only one. Labour MPs have managed to make a bit of a habit of bigging up their profiles by becoming mayors of major metropolitan areas. And I think right now, probably Andy Burnham, as I said, that they seem to be getting on, he and Keir Starmer. But he does have another problem, which is, of course, Sadiq Khan, who sort of exists in his own little bubble.
No, everybody... Everybody has a problem with Sadiq Khan. If Sadiq Khan thinks that he's made a good pitch for leader of the Labour Party, he's made a very good pitch for losing for the Labour Party.
But I think that's part of why it is that he's continued down the route that he has. I think he understands now that possibility is probably gone. So why not cling on and be in command of your own little sort of fiefdom? And actually, I think he understands the way things are going in London, he can hang on for as long as he wants. Londoners aren't annoyed enough at him yet.
Alicia, just want to end with this story about a record number of offenders with alcohol problems are going to be forced to stay dry this festive season to try to cut booze-fuelled crime over the festive period. Tell me a bit more about that.
It's really interesting. So it's about offenders. You normally have antisocial behavioural, those ankle tags, but they've got this really clever invention that I actually didn't really know much about, but it's quite high tech. It monitors an offender's sweat levels and can detect whether or not they've been drinking. 39% of all violent crimes are actually linked to alcohol, so it clearly there's a clear correlation there, and it's a big issue that the government really want to crack down on. And they are asking more and more offenders with these ankle tags to wear one of those ones so they can monitor alcohol intake and stop them from drinking altogether in order to really crack down on crime and try and get those numbers down.